All right, we have a bit of an update on the situation in Florida where the Desantis shut down all the pro-Palestinian student groups in the Florida university system. And I was on the line about this one. As far as is it really objectionable, or is it just kind of okay? I mean, the easiest thing that it stood out to me was like, oh, okay, this is the first thing that you're really going to challenge the schools over in the student groups, It's criticism of Israel. That's the thing that finally starts getting these crazy commie student groups banned from college campuses. It's like, so I was a little off put by that this is the first time that, but then I looked at the language and he said, well, the letter from the university system said, well, this is directly praising and endorsing acts of terror against civilians. And I said, okay, well, that, considering that schools should have rules of conduct and for students and things like that, if you have a group that's putting out, official statements, clubs, saying we support acts of terror against civilians, I go, okay, that is good enough grounds to disband a club. I thought that was appropriate. But the law that was being cited, I talked about the Florida, law against anti-Semitism. That's what Desantis calls it. It really is the Israeli Orthodoxy Enforcement Act. Essentially, you have to regurgitate Israeli propaganda, or else you are going to be punished by the state government. It was a restriction on the free speech of people who interact with the government. But mostly government employees is what it was, what it was targeted at. Essentially saying that if you're an employee of a Florida government institution, you cannot criticize Israel openly. That is grounds for termination. Now, at the time with this law, I had a very big problem with it because it's like, you're going to restrict the speech of your employees, and this, for one thing, and two, this is what you're going to do it on. These are the grounds you're, just for protecting Israel, So, I mean, you could do plenty of other things and still be an employee of the state of Florida. The only thing you can't do is criticize Israel. That's grounds for immediate termination. And so this has been bubbling under the surface for a while now. DeSantis's rapid Israeli supremacy, I guess, is how you'd look at it. I mean, it's Israeli maximalism. I don't know. It's just there can be no deviation from the established orthodoxy as handed down, the talking points that come out of Jerusalem. And so we got a sight a bit deeper into that yesterday when DeSantis was speaking before, I believe it was yesterday, the Republican Jewish Coalition. It was some event in Las Vegas, I believe. And at this event, DeSantis brought up this termination of the student groups. Apparently, I think they were called Students for Justice in Palestine, is what he said. And he said that, they said that they supported, what Hamas did. And he said, sure, you have freedom of speech to say a lot of dumb things in America, but what you don't have is a right to provide material support to a terrorist group. So this is a big, big line he's crossing. The reason why these groups were banned, according to DeSantis, is not because they were supporting the terror attacks on civilians, and that is, against school rules, and that's, against the code of conduct or whatever, and so that's not a club that should be allowed at the school, so that the club gets banned from school. Had nothing to do with school rules. What he is saying is that their defense of Hamas's actions, the speech itself, is material support for a terrorist organization, which theoretically, or I guess it's implied, they could be prosecuted for. DeSantis is not having his government do that. The Attorney General is not prosecuting these students for material support for a terrorist organization, but that seems to be what he's threatening here. He is saying that was their crime, and that they got away with just having their club disbanded. If that's the case, if speech is now material support for a terrorist organization, just saying you agree with someone's actions, no matter how heinous, that is now what makes you a terrorist. Then DeSantis must never be allowed to become the president of the United States. I have not heard language this dangerous, this overtly dangerous, from a presidential candidate. I can't think of any. I don't think Obama said anything this ridiculous. I mean, he said, he made his comment about the bitter clingers with their God and their guns. I don't remember Obama ever saying that speech makes you a terrorist. There are a lot of crazy, like woke lefties that say that. I don't think Joe Biden ever said that. I don't think Joe Biden says that your speech makes you a terrorist. The FBI has said that. They've implied that. They have targeted groups based on their speech and said, that, and put people on watch lists. But I don't remember anything this extreme from a presidential candidate. It is chilling. And I've gone from a point of being, very happy I live in the state of Florida. I feel pretty comfortable with DeSantis' government to where it's like, I better watch what I tweet. Because if I'm a little too critical of Israel, let alone pro-Hamas, which I guess they'll go after those people first. So I'll have warning before they go after us. Those of us who are just critical of Israel and not, pro-Hamas, they'll go after all of the overtly pro-Hamas people maybe and throw them in the gulag. But I'm not too far down the list, and I think in the eyes of someone like Ron DeSantis, an ultra-Zionist, an Israeli supremacist, I don't think that he sees a material difference between someone like me, who finds the reaction of the Israeli government to Hamas's attack on October the 7th, who finds Israel's response completely indefensible, extreme, to say the least. As I said yesterday, they reacted to an attack that killed 1,400 people by killing 7,000 people and counting. That's completely indefensible. And so I don't think that DeSantis, in his heart, would see me any differently than he sees those students in Tallahassee or Gainesville or Orlando. I think that DeSantis is 100% committed to enforcing the orthodoxy of the Netanyahu government in Israel. And as we've seen this week, I've heard a story of at least one school teacher in, I think it was Dade County. I don't think it was Miami proper. I think it was like a suburb. A teacher who was fired they had 2 counts against her in the news story I heard. So they had 2 things that they alleged, she said, both of which were fireable offenses. One was she encouraged her students to pray for Palestine. So now prayers are grounds for termination, which I guess you're not allowed to pray in school anyway. So maybe she's fired just based on that because, we can't have, we have to have state-enforced atheism in our schools. No prayer in schools. So maybe on that one it's just because she said prayer. And then the second thing was she said that the Israelis are baby killers, which is a factually true statement. Israel's bombs have killed many babies. Hundreds, at the very least, could be described as babies. If you want to use the term more broadly and just refer to, very young people, children, then based on the demographic breakdown that we have, and it's loose still, it would seem, I think it would even be fair to say that Israel has killed, in this latest war, thousands of babies, I think, or children. Because the Gaza population is, if not a majority, it's a near 50-50 split between minors and adults. And so if you kill 7,000 Gazans at random, at least half of them, you would suspect, are going to be under the age of 18. But anyway, according to the story, she was fired for saying both of these things because it violated Florida's law against anti-Semitism. Pray for Palestine is anti-Semitic. Saying that Israel kills babies, a factually true statement. Anti-Semitic. And so that woman lost her job. She lost her career. She, after being fired for being an anti-Semite, you think that she's going to have an easy job getting hired as a teacher elsewhere? No, she at the very least has to move to a different state. But if she has on her resume, on her record, in news reports that she was fired from her previous job as a teacher for being an anti-Semite, well then, what kind of school is going to want to hire her? That's going to create problems if it's known that one of your teachers was previously fired for being an anti-Semite. I mean, even if it's made up, a Jewish family could sue you and say that in private, when no one else was around, little Susie Weinberg was castigated by this teacher, and this teacher called her terrible names and said she's a disgusting Jew, and we're suing the school. And so this teacher now that that's on her record, and that will hold up pretty well in court. It says, and the court will go, well, school, it says here that you hired this teacher who was fired for being an anti-Semite before, and now she's verbally abusing allegedly this Jewish student, and there are other Jewish students who corroborate her. Her life's destroyed, okay? She has to get this career. She's never going to be a teacher again. She has to be in some other job where she's not around people, because this will always be a risk. And no organization is going to want to take the risk on hiring this woman. And so this is just the first life that I know of that has been destroyed unfairly by Ron DeSantis' Israeli Orthodoxy Act. So it is clear in the state of Florida we are not allowed to talk about the crimes, the war crimes committed by Israel. Now, if you want to talk about the crimes of Hamas, you can do that all you want. That's perfectly fine. We should acknowledge those. We should talk about them endlessly on cable news. But when it comes to crimes committed by the other side, that's a big no-no. So anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.